Imagine being a passenger on a small plane, putting your trust in the hands of the pilot, your own daughter. That's the situation Jenny Block's father found himself in on that fateful day in December 2022. Little did he know his daughter's inexperience and overconfidence would lead to something that his family will never be able to forget. On December 7, 2023, Jenny Block, known as TN Fly Girl, and her father took off in her 1965 Beech 35-C33 Debonair. Jenny had only recently gotten her pilot's license in 2021 and quickly transitioned from a simpler Piper Cherokee to the more complex Beechcraft. As they flew from Knoxville towards Benton, Arkansas, little did they know that this flight would be their last. Jenny Block, born on July 8, 1979, seemed to have it all. A successful career, thriving businesses, and a passion for life. After graduating from the University of Tennessee with a bachelor's degree in human resources, Jenny channeled her entrepreneurial spirit into founding 2 companies, Lux Home and Designs, specializing in designing and building custom homes, and Plantation Reclaimed, focusing on antique reclaimed wood flooring. Even if you go to her YouTube account now, you can see the link to her businesses and a bunch of videos. Though after her accident, someone did remove most of her airplane-related videos from her channel. Her latest video is flooded with comments related to the accident. So it all began in September 2021, when at the age of 42, Jenny started on a new adventure, aviation. She purchased a 1969 Piper Cherokee, marking the beginning of her journey as a pilot. Eager to share her experiences with others, Jenny started documenting her flying journey on social media. She created an Instagram account under the username 865flygirl and launched a YouTube channel called TN Flygirl, which quickly gained a following of 15.7 thousand subscribers and featured 139 videos showcasing her aviation journey. Jenny's third solo flight, a significant milestone for any aspiring pilot, took place on September 26, 2021, just a few weeks after she began her training. She proudly shared this achievement on her Instagram, celebrating the progress she had made in such short a time. As she continued to learn and grow as a pilot, Jenny's social media presence flourished, attracting a community of aviation enthusiasts who were inspired by her passion and dedication. After almost 8 months of intensive training, Jenny reached another major milestone on May 15, 2022. She passed her private pilot check ride. This achievement was a testament to her hard work and determination, as well as her natural aptitude for flying. With her private pilot license in hand, Jenny was ready to take on new challenges and explore the skies with greater freedom and confidence. As Jenny transitioned from the familiar controls of the Piper Cherokee to the more advanced 1965 Beech 35C33 Debonair, questions began to arise about the pace of her aviation journey. Was she moving too quickly, taking on more than she was ready for? Despite the Piper Cherokee being a good aircraft for a new pilot, Jenny decided to purchase a new aircraft just 2 months after passing her check ride. On July 14, 2022, Jenny posted on social media, "So today I did a thing. Goodbye to my Piper. Hello to my Beechcraft family." The aircraft she purchased was a 1965 Beech 35C33 Debonair. The Piper Cherokee, a single-engine, low-wing aircraft with fixed tricycle landing gear, is known for its simplicity and ease of handling, making it an ideal choice for student pilots and those new to aviation. It has a cruise speed of around 135 knots and a range of about 500 nautical miles. In contrast, the Beechcraft Debonair is a more complex and powerful aircraft, with retractable landing gear and a cruise speed of around 160 knots. It also has a longer range of about 700 nautical miles. Concerns were raised about her decision to transition to the more demanding Beechcraft Debonair soon after obtaining her private pilot certificate. An expert on the case said, "It's never a bad idea to keep flying what you flew in training, at least for a little bit, so that you can build up some hours and become more comfortable flying by yourself." When she purchased the Beechcraft Debonair, Jenny probably had less than 100 hours of flying experience. As Jenny continued to document her flying experiences on her YouTube channel, TN Flygirl, and Instagram under the username 865flygirl, a troubling pattern emerged. Her videos frequently showcased her reliance on the aircraft's autopilot system, a feature that can be both a blessing and a curse for inexperienced pilots. Jenny Block's growing reliance on autopilot technology became a central theme in her YouTube videos, raising concerns among experienced pilots who watched her content. In one particularly troubling clip, Jenny admitted to accidentally turning off the autopilot and not knowing how to turn it back on, a situation she found more amusing than alarming. This incident highlighted her overconfidence in the technology and her lack of understanding of its proper use, a dangerous combination for a newly licensed pilot. Jenny's videos often depicted her fiddling with her iPad while in flight, a distraction that likely further compromised her ability to fly visually and maintain a proper heading. On January 3, 2023, Jenny Block embarked on a flight from Knoxville's downtown Island Airport to Benton, Arkansas. The journey, which should have been routine for a pilot of her experience level, would soon take a tragic turn. Jenny had filed a VFR, Visual Flight Rules, flight plan, indicating her intention to navigate primarily by visual references outside the cockpit. She also requested VFR flight following, a service provided by air traffic control to assist pilots with advisories and help them maintain situational awareness during their flight. As the Beechcraft Debonair took to the skies, Jenny's confidence was high. She had recently transitioned from the more forgiving Piper Cherokee to this more advanced aircraft, and her YouTube channel, TN Flygirl, had been gaining traction. However, her overconfidence and reliance on technology would soon prove to be her undoing. Approximately 140 nautical miles into the flight, an air traffic controller notified Jenny that she had deviated from her intended course. Acknowledging the error, she assured the controller that she was correcting her heading. As the flight progressed, the Beechcraft began to exhibit signs of instability. At around 10:19 a.m., the aircraft started a series of climbs and descents, accompanied by fluctuations in speed. These erratic movements indicated that Jenny was struggling to maintain a consistent altitude and velocity, a red flag for any experienced pilot. During this critical period, air traffic control made 2 attempts to contact Jenny, but she failed to respond. The silence from the cockpit was deafening, and it became increasingly clear that something was amiss. The once confident pilot seemed to be losing control of her aircraft, and the situation was rapidly deteriorating. The very tools Jenny had relied upon to compensate for her lack of experience were now working against her. In the final moments of the doomed flight, a faint transmission from Jenny crackled over the radio, followed by an even fainter, largely unintelligible message from her father. These haunting last words would be the last anyone would hear from the ill-fated aircraft before it plummeted to the ground. Now, let's look at what really went wrong, according to NTSB's preliminary report. First off, Jenny was using an autopilot system, but it looks like she didn't really get how to use it right. You know when you try to program your home thermostat and end up just turning it off and on again? It was kind of like that, but with a plane. She turned the autopilot off when she didn't like what it was doing, but then kept turning the plane until she was totally off course. Besides the tech confusion, there was a bigger problem: overconfidence. Jenny jumped into flying a complex aircraft with less than 100 hours of flying time under her belt. It's like if you just learned to drive in a parking lot and then decided to hit the highway in a race car. Risky, right? And on top of that, she was recording these flights, not to study and learn, but more for sharing on social media. While her videos were definitely helpful to her viewers, doing this while flying can often end up being a distraction. The crash site tells its own grim story. The trees around were burned from a fire after the crash, showing how intense the impact was. Investigators are still trying to piece together all the clues to figure out the exact cause, but it's clear the crash was severe. And while we're talking about her story, let's not forget her father, who was also in the plane with her. They were incredibly close, flying together, sharing those moments up in the sky. It wasn't just Jenny's story that ended that day. It was also the loss of a supportive father, his own life and dreams unfulfilled. So what can we all take from this? Before you step up to bigger challenges, like flying a more complex aircraft or even driving a faster car, get the experience. Learn from every single outing. Like, really learn. Don't rush the journey to jump into something flashier or supposedly cooler. Life's not just about the destination or the fancy tech you can show off. It's about safely enjoying the ride, learning as you go, and making sure you're ready for the next step. As a parent, it's natural to want to share your passions with your children. But when your passion is flying commercial airliners, that innocent impulse can have deadly consequences. This is what happened in this case. Pilot Yaroslav Kudrinsky let his 15-year-old son fly a passenger plane, leading to 75 casualties. March 23, 1994, began as a routine day for the crew and passengers of Aeroflot Flight 593, a scheduled international flight from Moscow's Sheremetyevo International Airport to Hong Kong's Kai Tak Airport. The Airbus A310-300, a state-of-the-art aircraft renowned for its technological sophistication, was under the command of two experienced pilots, Captain Viktorovich Danilov, aged 40, and Relief Captain Yaroslav Vladimirovich Kudrinsky, 39. Kudrinsky, a seasoned aviator with over 8,000 flight hours, including 907 on the A310, had an impressive flight history spanning several Soviet-era aircraft, such as the Yushin 76, Yakovlev Yak-40, and Anavan AN-12. On this fateful flight, Captain Kudrinsky made a decision that would forever change the course of Aeroflot's history and the lives of all those aboard Flight 593. In a momentary lapse of judgment, he invited his two children, 15-year-old Eldar and 13-year-old Yana, into the cockpit during the flight. While not uncommon in the pre-9/11 era for passengers, especially children, to visit the flight deck with the captain's permission, Kudrinsky's actions would soon prove to have disastrous consequences. As the aircraft cruised high above the Siberian wilderness, Captain Kudrinsky allowed his daughter Yana to sit in the captain's seat, manipulating the autopilot controls to give her the sensation of flying the plane. This breached international aviation regulations, but the gravity of the situation had yet to manifest itself. After Yana's turn, Kudrinsky extended the same opportunity to his son Eldar, unaware that this seemingly innocent gesture would set in motion a chain of events that would ultimately lead to tragedy. The Airbus A310's advanced autopilot system, designed to maintain a steady course and altitude, was now in the hands of an untrained teenager. As Eldar sat in the captain's seat, his father's watchful eye was diverted, and the young boy's curiosity got the better of him. As Eldar took his place in the captain's seat, his father, Relief Captain Yaroslav Kudrinsky, manipulated the autopilot controls to create the illusion that the teenager was flying the aircraft. Unbeknownst to Kudrinsky, his son's eager hands would apply more pressure to the control wheel than his sister Yana had during her turn. Eldar's tight grip disengaged the autopilot's control over the plane's ailerons, a critical component of the aircraft's flight control system. In that fateful moment, Aeroflot Flight 593's Airbus A310 transitioned from the safety of an automated flight to the unpredictable realm of manual control, entering what is known as control wheel steering, CWS mode. This sudden shift allowed for direct manipulation of the aircraft's roll axis, a task that required the skilled hands and quick reflexes of an experienced pilot. With each passing second, the aircraft's bank angle grew more tilted, edging closer to a point of no return. The advanced technology of the Airbus A310, designed to ensure the safety and stability of the aircraft, was now at the mercy of an untrained kid. The aircraft's increasing bank angle would soon reach a critical threshold, setting in motion a chain of events that would test the limits of both human and machine. As the aircraft's bank angle crept past 45 degrees, a silent warning flashed across the flight deck, indicating that the autopilot had disengaged. The transition to CWS mode went unnoticed by both Captain Kudrinsky and First Officer Piskarov, who were accustomed to the audible alerts that typically accompanied autopilot changes on the Soviet-era aircraft they had previously flown. The Airbus A310, however, did not provide an audio warning for this specific mode change, leaving the pilots unaware of the critical shift in control. As Eldar continued to manipulate the control wheel, the aircraft's bank angle grew increasingly steep, reaching a mind-boggling 90 degrees. The plane was now in a knife-edge position, its wings perpendicular to the ground below. The weight of the situation began to dawn on Captain Kredinsky as he realized the immense pressure his son was applying to the control wheel. In a desperate attempt to regain control, he frantically urged Eldar to let go, his voice tinged with a growing sense of panic. "Eldar, get away. Go to the back. Go to the back, Eldar. You see the danger, don't you? Go away, Eldar. Go away, I tell you, go away." The captain's words, captured by the cockpit voice recorder, paint a vivid picture of the escalating crisis unfolding within the confines of the flight deck. As Eldar relinquished his grip on the control wheel, the full extent of the aircraft's precarious position became apparent. The Airbus A310 was now in a dangerously steep bank, far beyond the normal operating parameters for a commercial airliner. First Officer Piskarov, recognizing the urgency of the situation, called out to Captain Kredinsky to apply full power to the engines, hoping to correct the aircraft's trajectory and bring it back to a stable flight path. However, the aircraft's design limitations meant that it could not sustain such a deep turn, even with the application of full thrust. As the plane stalled, the crew found themselves grappling with a rapidly deteriorating situation. Their years of experience and training put to the ultimate test. The cockpit voice recorder captured the mounting tension and urgency as the crew struggled to regain control of the aircraft. As the plane's descent accelerated, a sense of sheer terror gripped the cockpit. The crew's attempts to rectify the plane's trajectory grew increasingly frantic as the ground rushed up to meet them. They applied maximum thrust to the engines, but nothing happened. Inside the cabin, passengers were thrown about violently as the aircraft bucked and shuddered. Luggage tumbled from overhead compartments, adding to the mayhem as terrified cries filled the air. The pilots yanked back on the control column, hoping to pull the plane out of its steep dive, but the aircraft's momentum proved too great to overcome. The Airbus A310, once a marvel of modern engineering, had become a helpless plaything in the grasp of gravity, its fate sealed by a series of critical errors and misjudgments. As the aircraft plummeted towards the unforgiving terrain below, Captain Kredinsky's desperate pleas to his son Eldar echoed through the cockpit, preserved in the chilling recordings of the voice recorder. "Eldar, get away. Go to the back, Eldar. You see the danger, don't you? Go away, Eldar. Go away, I tell you, go away." At precisely 12:58 in the morning, the Airbus A310 met its tragic end, slamming into a densely wooded hillside some 85 kilometers southeast of Novokuznetsk. The impact, as violent as it was sudden, claimed the lives of all 75 souls on board. As investigators sifted through the wreckage and pored over the data recovered from the black boxes, a clear picture of the events leading up to the tragic crash of Aeroflot Flight 593 began to emerge. The findings of the investigation were as surprising as they were sobering. Rather than uncovering evidence of a catastrophic technical failure or mechanical malfunction, the inquiry revealed a far more unsettling truth. The primary cause of the crash was human error, and a profound lapse in judgment on the part of the flight crew, most notably Captain Kredinsky. The recordings confirmed that Captain Kredinsky had allowed his children, 15-year-old Eldar and 13-year-old Yana, to take turns sitting in the pilot's seat and manipulating the controls of the Airbus A310. As the investigation delved deeper into the crew's actions following the disengagement of the autopilot, a pattern of errors and miscalculations came to light. The pilots, likely influenced by their primary experience with Soviet-built aircraft and their lack of familiarity with the Airbus's systems, had responded to the crisis with a series of overcorrections that had ultimately caused the plane to stall and enter a deadly spin. The tragic loss of Aeroflot Flight 593 serves as a stark reminder of the immense responsibility that comes with operating an aircraft. The incident underscores the critical importance of maintaining strict cockpit discipline and adhering to established safety protocols at all times. Have you ever wondered what would happen if a plane's windshield suddenly blew out mid-flight? It's a scenario that seems too terrifying to be real. But for the crew and passengers of British Airways Flight 5390, it became a shocking reality. On June 10, 1990, British Airways Flight 5390 took off from Birmingham to Malaga with 81 passengers and 6 crew members on board. Just 13 minutes into the flight, as the plane reached an altitude of 17,300 feet, the unthinkable happened. The windshield on Captain Tim Lancaster's side exploded, causing explosive decompression in the cockpit. In an instant, Captain Lancaster was violently sucked out of the gaping hole, his body pinned against the outside of the fuselage by the immense force of the wind. Only his legs remained inside the cockpit. The stakes couldn't have been higher. 87 lives hung in the balance as the crippled aircraft and its horrified occupants found themselves in a desperate fight for survival. British Airways Flight 5390 was a regularly scheduled passenger flight from Birmingham, England to Malaga, Spain on June 10, 1990. The flight deck was manned by Captain Tim Lancaster, an experienced aviator with over 11,050 total flying hours under his belt, 1,075 of which were on this very same aircraft. Alongside him sat First Officer Alastair Aitchison, also a seasoned pilot, having logged around 7,500 total flying hours, with more than 1,100 on this particular aircraft type. Prior to the flight, the aircraft had undergone mandatory maintenance, keeping it grounded for approximately 27 hours. The crew, familiar with each other, anticipated a smooth and pleasant day at work. As they prepared for departure under a gray but clear sky, the passengers settled in for the popular flight to the sunny Costa del Sol. At 8:20 local time, Flight 5390 lifted off from Birmingham Airport, ascending through the congested London airspace without worries. Following standard British Airways procedures, First Officer Aitchison handled the departure, while Captain Lancaster was slated to take control for the rest of the journey. The aircraft climbed steadily, initially leveling off at 14,000 feet before receiving clearance to proceed to 23,000 feet. With an expected cruising altitude of 25,000 feet. As the plane gained altitude and the crew completed their post-departure duties, a sense of calm descended over the flight deck. The pilots, now more at ease, made minor adjustments to their seatbelts for added comfort. Little did they know that a catastrophic event was about to unfold, one that would push the boundaries of human endurance and test the mettle of everyone on board. At an altitude of approximately 17,300 feet, a shocking turn of events was set in motion. In the blink of an eye, the calm atmosphere was shattered by an explosive sound that echoed through the cockpit. Suddenly, the pilots found themselves engulfed in a dense fog, obscuring their vision as the aircraft continued to hurtle through the sky. What exactly had happened, and how would the crew respond to this unprecedented crisis nearly 3.5 miles above the Earth? Without warning, the left windshield panel in the cockpit, where Captain Tim Lancaster was seated, suddenly and violently separated from the aircraft. The force of the sudden explosive decompression caused by the window coming loose propelled Captain Lancaster head first out of the climbing aircraft. Explosive decompression is a rapid and forceful loss of cabin pressure, often resulting from a structural failure or breach in the aircraft's pressurized hull. In this case, the windshield separation created a gaping hole, causing the air inside the cockpit to rush out at an alarming rate. The decompression was so intense that it pinned Lancaster against the fuselage outside the aircraft, and he clung to life for over 20 minutes. The sudden loss of pressure caused a dense condensation fog to form, drastically reducing visibility for the flight crew. To make matters worse, the force of the decompression violently threw the cockpit door into the flight deck, jamming the throttle controls and causing the plane to begin a rapid descent. The autopilot disengaged as Captain Lancaster's body was sucked out, kicking the flight controls in the process. Amidst the chaos and terror, the cabin crew, particularly steward Nigel Ogden, displayed incredible bravery. Ogden rushed to grab Captain Lancaster's legs, fighting against the tremendous force of the wind to prevent him from being completely ejected from the aircraft. With the captain incapacitated and the plane in a precarious state, Aitchison, the other pilot, had to muster all his skill and composure to regain control of the aircraft, displaying remarkable composure under immense pressure. Atchison swiftly seized command of the stricken BAC-111. His first priority was to stabilize the aircraft, which had begun to plummet due to the disengagement of the autopilot when Lancaster's body kicked the flight controls. Despite the deafening noise and freezing wind filling the cockpit, Atchison managed to maintain a steady hand on the controls. He initiated a rapid emergency descent to bring the aircraft down to a safe altitude where everyone could breathe normally without the need for supplemental oxygen. The first officer's exceptional airmanship and problem-solving abilities were further exemplified by his attention to detail in the midst of the chaos. As noted in the case information, he even remembers to switch on the auxiliary power unit so that he has electrical power when he gets down on the runway, because he realizes that he's going to have to shut the engines down to get the passengers off, and unless the APU is running, it's going to be delayed. This level of foresight and system knowledge undoubtedly contributed to the successful outcome of the flight. As Hutchinson fought to keep the plane under control, a desperate struggle was unfolding just behind the cockpit door. Steward Nigel Ogden and other brave crew members were locked in a battle against the forces of nature, risking their own lives to prevent Captain Lancaster from being ripped away from the aircraft. The extreme wind and frigid temperatures posed a formidable challenge, but their determination never wavered. As the cabin crew fought to save Captain Lancaster, Steward Nigel Ogden displayed remarkable courage in the face of extreme adversity. Without hesitation, he rushed into the cockpit and grabbed hold of the captain's waist, determined to prevent him from slipping further out of the gaping hole where the windshield once was. The force of the wind was so intense that Lancaster's back was pressed flush against the fuselage, his head pounding relentlessly against the left-hand window. The temperature outside the aircraft had plummeted to a bone-chilling -17 degrees. Exposed to these merciless elements, Ogden suffered frostbite on his arms and left eye as he clung to Lancaster with all his strength. To make matters worse, Atchison chose not to wear his oxygen mask, prioritizing clear communication with the cabin crew and air traffic control over his own physical comfort. This decision put him at risk of hypoxia, a condition caused by insufficient oxygen supply to the body, which could impair his cognitive abilities and decision-making skills. Meanwhile, Atchison requested air traffic control to let him land at the Gatwick Airport, a familiar destination with ample runway length. However, air traffic control advised that Southampton Airport was closer, presenting a quicker option for the aircraft. Atchison hesitated, well aware of the challenges posed by Southampton's shorter runway, which measured only about 1,700 meters in length. Given the aircraft's heavy fuel load, he knew that a runway of approximately 2,500 meters would be ideal for a safe landing. Atchison chose to proceed with an emergency landing at Southampton Airport, despite the less than optimal conditions. To further complicate matters, Southampton Airport lacked an instrument landing system, ILS, a navigational aid that would have provided precise guidance during the approach. This meant that Atchison would have to rely on a visual approach, adding another layer of difficulty to an already challenging situation. Undeterred, he requested vectors from air traffic control to guide him towards the airport, steeling himself for the task ahead. As Atchison prepared for the emergency landing, he found himself shouldering an immense responsibility. With Captain Lancaster incapacitated and the cabin crew fully occupied with holding on to him, Atchison was essentially flying the aircraft alone. This meant that he had to manage all aspects of the approach and landing, from configuring the aircraft to ensuring a stable descent, all while contending with the extreme conditions in the cockpit. The aircraft descended through the dense fog, with First Officer Atchison carefully guiding it towards Southampton Airport. His eyes were fixed on the runway, barely visible through the condensation-covered windshield. The wind whipped against the plane, threatening to blow it off course, but Atchison's steady hand on the controls kept it on track. He knew that every second counted, and the lives of everyone on board rested squarely on his shoulders. The plane touched down on the asphalt with a jolt, its tires screeching as they fought for traction. Atchison immediately applied the brakes, feeling the aircraft shudder as it rapidly decelerated. As the aircraft slowed, Atchison began to breathe a sigh of relief. He had done it. He had safely landed the crippled plane under the most extreme conditions imaginable. But there was no time to celebrate. He quickly brought the plane to a stop, mindful of the urgent need to evacuate the passengers and attend to Captain Lancaster. As the plane came to a halt on the runway, the cabin crew sprang into action, rapidly preparing for an emergency evacuation. The passengers, many of whom had been unaware of the full extent of the crisis, looked around in confusion and relief. For them, the nightmare was over, but for the crew, the work had only just begun. As the dust settled on the dramatic landing, attention quickly shifted to the immediate aftermath of the incident. Captain Lancaster, who had been partially sucked out of the cockpit window, was in desperate need of medical attention, as was Steward Nigel Ogden, who had bravely clung to the captain's legs throughout the event. After the crash, investigators examined the bolts used to secure the windscreen, comparing them to the specifications outlined in the maintenance manual. What they discovered was alarming. The bolts were shorter and narrower than the required dimensions, with a diameter approximately 0.66 millimeters thinner than specified. This seemingly minor discrepancy proved to be the catalyst for the catastrophic event. The bolts, lacking the appropriate length and width, were unable to withstand the immense pressure differential between the aircraft's cabin and the external environment at cruising altitude. In the months following the harrowing incident, Captain Tim Lancaster made a remarkable recovery, defying the odds and returning to the cockpit just 5 months later. His unwavering determination and resilience served as an inspiration to the aviation community, a testament to the indomitable spirit of those who take to the skies. The crew of British Airways Flight 5390 received well-deserved commendations for their extraordinary bravery and quick thinking in the face of unimaginable adversity. Remember, while it's easy to get caught up in the excitement of flying or any adventure, the fundamentals are there to protect us and those we care about. Whether you're up in the air or grounded, take these stories as critical lessons in responsibility and the consequences of overlooking what really matters. Until next time, fly safe.